applause for Rachel Spivey, who I'm so excited to speak with. All the things that you're doing is all about helping other Black women succeed in tech. And I do want to just start by saying that despite the progress that Black women have made in tech, how many know that we still have a very long way to go? Absolutely, absolutely. And it's Rachel who's actually been focusing on helping people, women that look like us, thrive at one of the biggest tech companies in the world, which is Google. So let's start with your journey at Google. Tell us when and how you entered into tech.
Yeah, so I will just say really quickly, it's great to be with all of you. Thank you so much for having me and hosting me here. My journey has been a roller coaster, I'll say that. And I say it's a roller coaster because it started off very slow. There was a steep climb, and there's been twists and turns in between. And so Google came to recruit at my campus, Hampton University. Any Hamptonians? Hamptonians? Well, okay. Hampton, my senior year for the first time. And I remember when I first heard about Google, I was like, this company is for me. This is for me. I got there, made it to final rounds. This is a long story short. And then the company went through a hiring freeze. This was 08, 09. And so I ended up working in another company for 9 months, kept in contact with the recruiter because I really believed the company was for me. And shortly after, they reached back out and they said, are you still interested in coming? And I said, yes. So interviewed, moved to the Bay Area in a month. And that's when the journey really started. I mean, this was 2010, so as you can imagine, today is Google's 25th birthday. Shout out to Google. But this was 2010. This was the wild days. These are the days that you hear about in the news. So, I mean, literally just going to get my badge, I had to walk past a dinosaur with flamingos, a volleyball court, and a pool, and like people flashing by me in bikes. And I'm like, where am I? What am I supposed to do here? And so it was just a very slow start in terms of trying to figure out the culture, how to succeed. And the quickest way that I figured out to make impact was to find my lane in something that I knew well. And Google was just starting to really increase our HBCU engagement. As I said, I went to an HBCU, and I raised my hand, I said, I'll help. And luckily, the people who were working on HBCUs at the time, none of them had attended an HBCU. So I had this unique perspective to bring, and that started my journey of supporting underrepresented Googlers and underrepresented people, period. So from my HBCU engagement, I started to then work with the diversity team more, joined the diversity team. I've been on the diversity team for the last 11 years, so Google total 13, 11 on the diversity team. And so I did small things, but what really started to make the difference and started that steep climb of my roller coaster ride was after the verdict of Trayvon Martin came out, I decided I wanted to do something. And, you know, originally I was a chapter lead of the Black Googler Network, and I said, you know what? We can do something. It doesn't have to just be me. So we reached out to our executive sponsors, who were the chief legal officer and head of compliance and ethics at Google at that time. I said, are we crazy? Can we do something? And they said, no, let's do it. So we did a hoodie march across Google's campus. And we marched on TGIF stage, which is our company-wide meeting every week with hoodies. Our founders put hoodies on too. And that was what sparked our racial justice efforts. And we started investing in racial justice nonprofits. And that's what really started me on this trajectory where I became a subject matter expertise. And so then we did a lot of stuff around race. And to be honest, like my career cooled off for a little bit. And then, you know, I started supporting employee resource groups. I supported the Black Googler Network, the Hispanic Googler Network. And then shortly after, we had some attrition issues. And people were like, why are people leaving? Why are people leaving? I'm like, well, I support these communities. I know why they're leaving. And so, long story short, again, I started just one person at a time, helping one. I started with a Black woman that actually lives in Ireland. She reached out to me the other day, which is so special. So she started helping her, and one client came to 2, became 10. And then in 2018, we got the approval to start a retention and progression team. So 5 years later, we've helped thousands of Black, Latinx, and Indigenous Googlers globally thrive in their workplace. And I know we'll get into it a little bit more, but I've just said that I will say that it's just been such a tremendous journey. I started the company as an L2, which is our very entry level. I've received 6 promotions since and made it to the executive level. And thank you. And I did it all without compromising my values. So
That's amazing, Rachel. And thank you for giving us a brief overview of your 13 years at Google. Talk about what it is that you do day to day and what it means to really lead a stay and thrive team at Google.
yeah, I'm going to describe what we do, and then I'm going to describe why it matters. So what we do is we make sure that retention and progression rates are at parity across race and gender lines. And to do that, we provide one-to-one support to Black, Latinx, and Indigenous Googlers in the US and underrepresented Googlers globally. Somebody from my team will meet with that Googler, so they can either reach out and ask for help. Sometimes we might reach out to them and say, hey, how are things going? Everything okay? But once that engagement starts, we have a conversation with them to understand what are some of their goals, are they facing any challenges? And then we provide a customized solution to work with them until resolution. So we stay with them until it's resolved. And it could be, that they're leaving the company. It's very rare. It's a slim percentage, but we work with them until they're leaving or until we resolve. Right now, we're sitting to date at a 94% retention rate. Our average, and a little bit of that is because of the market, so I like to say our average because I like to be conservative. Our average is 86%. And so from there, we also anonymize the findings from working with those Googlers. And we use this in a data system to help inform, what is really happening? Why are people leaving? How can we stop this? So we don't have to keep just working with people on a one-to-one basis. But we get those insights, we feed it back into the business, we feed it back to leadership. I meet with all of the Google leads quarterly and talk about the anonymized insights in their teams of hey, we're seeing microaggressions pop up in your organization. Hey, we're seeing, all of the things, and we go over the data to help them understand and correct the issue so we don't have to keep just working on a one-to-one basis. We also, lastly, if we do have Googlers exiting, we humanize the exit process through offering exit interviews to understand what happened, tell us your story, so then we can also provide it back to the business. So that was a whole bunch of the tactical nuts and bolts. Okay. Now, why it matters. So over time, we see that it really makes a difference in terms of representation, not just to bring new people in, but make sure that they're staying. So perfect example, on my team, you could be a Black person reporting into a Black person, reporting into a Black person, reporting into a Black person, reporting into a Black person. That would have never happened in 2010 when I started the company. First of all, there wasn't even that many of us that you could even stack in a chain like that. But that's where it starts to make a difference. And statistically, we see that being under these powerhouse people of color, it makes a difference in your progression. And so we're providing that opportunity. The other reason why I love it so much is it starts to be a wealth generation mechanism that extends past Google, right? So, for example, I had a client reach out to me. Originally, he was thinking about leaving after 3 months of being at Google. We worked with him, helped resolve his situation. He ended up getting promotions. 4 years later, he's still here. What does that mean? He is now fully vested. Google stock is not a game. Praise God. Praise God for that. And so I can literally attest to the fact that being at Google for 13 years and the Google stock that I've been granted has not only changed my life, It's changed my immediate family's life. It's changed my extended family's life. And we get to do that and help Googlers stay and start creating generational wealth. And that's why it matters.
Rachel, can you talk about any specific initiatives that Google has in place to help the retention and progression of Black women? Is that something that you focus on?
Yes, definitely. I mean, Black women are our number one clients. So, I mean, we could, especially for the longest time, Black women have always been our number one clients. Behind the scenes, we do a lot of things like progression discussions, making sure that the PAs that they sit in, the product areas, sorry, if you see me go into Google lingo, stop me. The product areas that they sit in also have discussions about their career. So it's not just us from the outside, but other people chiming in to make sure that they are discussing their careers. We also work with an internal mobility team. So and they provide white glove service to all of our clients. So if you are interested in finding a new role, we will help you navigate to different roles and opportunities. Those are just some of the ways that we really support Black women.
Okay, so let's talk about, again, your career at Google. You started off entry level 13 years ago, and now you are a director. What strategies or skill sets helped you advance and really climb the ladder at your company?
First of all, I didn't have a strategy when I started. I just was there and happy to be there. Like I said, I didn't understand the company. I didn't understand the context. This was my first time in corporate America. I'm in California for the first time, never lived there before. So I really didn't have a strategy to start off. What I realized is that I've always had a voice. And once I realized how to combine my voice with the right moment, things really took off. And I say that because, so on my very first team, where I was not happy, let's be honest, I spoke up during a meeting with executives. And it was countercultural, but I did it. And one of the executives became my executive sponsor, and that was David Drummond, who was the chief legal officer at the time. And so that paid off dividends. Now, if I had combined that with the right moment, I would have gotten farther sooner. And then I learned that skill of combining my voice with the right moment and the right time to really take off. So the hoodie march with Trayvon Martin, that really pivoted to like, okay, using my voice at the right time, at the right moment. The Stay and Thrive team, like, hey, I'm seeing things, let's work on them, right time, right moment. So meeting the data, there was a need, and then also combining it with an answer.
Can you delve into that a little bit more when you mean about using your voice at the right time and moment? When you talked about the hoodie march and the other initiatives that you started at Google, including Stay and Thrive, it sounds like you really took initiative. Were you taking those initiatives just because, out of passion, or was it a part of a larger strategy, or, did you get promoted and say, let me, do something?
It was always passion, and then promotions came later. This was the thing that I did learn, though. If I had a big moment and like everyone really appreciated it, so for example, right after the hoodie march or after a big summit went well, that's when I start asking for things. I'm like, okay, I already have my ask ready, but I wait for some big moment where it's like, there's this applause, everything's going well, people are really happy with my work, and that's when I wait to ask for the next thing, and then that helps pivot me to the promotion. I did stop chasing promotions a long time ago, and they started following me. As soon as I stopped chasing the promotions, begging for them, pleading, trying to prove my worth and value, it started following me when I just started following my passions, doing what I needed to do, waiting for the right moment, and then speaking out.
Wow. Rachel, can you talk about any challenges that you endured or faced during your journey, and how did you overcome them?
Yes, ooh, child. I still deal with the challenges. The biggest thing is, sometimes I think it's people's response to me, and I think probably most people can understand that. I've always been a little vocal, a little loud, and some people love that approach and it works really well for them. Some people don't, and I've always had to navigate those people who don't. I find that just creating a personal connection with them and trying to also understand the climate around them. So I'll give an example. I had a peer who was, we were working on a long-term project together. She was outright nasty to me, just outright nasty. There were no words for it. Number one, I stepped back and I realized, okay, a lot of this is not about me. Most of this is not about me. So let me not take it personal. Number two, let me try and connect with her on a deeper level. Number three, let me try and meet her needs and meet her where she is. We still work together right now to this day, and our relationship is night and day. And there's so many moments that I think those have been the biggest challenges, is like those one-to-one people interactions where we don't necessarily agree. How are we going to convert this? How are they going to become partners? And so then we can get to a better place together.
How using that as an example, how exactly did you convert her into becoming an ally of yours?
Yeah, I think, like I said, it was more so the understanding where she was. So I'll go deeper. She was going through a lot in her personal life. And I realized, okay, this is not all about me. Then I realized what she was going on in her personal life. We shared a connection about what was happening in her personal life. And so that way led to a bridge. Then we could start communicating about the work differently, right? So it's turned from personal to now we're back to professional. And I realized like there were some needs that she felt like she wasn't getting even met professionally. Perfect. Okay, now we can work through that. And so it was like it was the steps of taking our time to get to building the personal relationship, helping us to communicate better so then we could deliver a better professional product.
So despite her, to use your words, being nasty, you decided to continue to pursue some type of personal/professional relationship with her. How did you do that? Did you offer to take her to lunch? Did you give her great feedback? Did you overcompensate in any way?
I think it was just checking in on her personally, taking the time to check in on her personally. When we did, she actually lived in a different office. She lived in New York. I lived in California at the time. When we did have a chance to get together, we would. But it came with grace, space, and opportunity. And I still say, like, there's a lot of challenging partners I work with. And instead of backing away, I lean in. And I think about, especially like, for example, if we have a leadership summit, the people that I'm going to the first are the people I have the most difficult relationships with. It's very hard for you to be gangster in person. And so I'm like, let's break this all the way down. And I have to stand my ground. I learned a long time ago too, and I say this from a woman in a petite body. I know that like a lot of people, it's very hard to be intimidated by me, so I know I can say things in a way that doesn't offend people, but what I say is like when I go to these leadership summits, I'm like, those are the first people I'm going to. Let's work this out, let's break this down. By the time we get back to the VCs, the conference rooms, everything is mellowed down because we took the time to correct the relationship. And we're not even talking about work at these conferences. I'm like, how are your kids? How, what's going on with you? Oh, I'm empathizing with something they're going through, taking the time to get to know them personally, and then they don't become an obstacle at work anymore.
Yeah, that's such a great strategy, and it really speaks to your people skills and just being, a great human. Like you said, giving folks grace and space and never take it personal. Rachel, can you talk about any mistakes that you may have made along your career journey and the lessons that it taught you?
Yes. So I think speaking up at the wrong moments, that was the mistake I made. So I talked about this example earlier so in my first team, I was a part of a hiring team, and we would meet with executives every week, and 5 different executives from Google. And we would go over candidates, and this one meeting, my manager put together a recommendation about whether or not we should hire this person. And this person was a person of color. And I didn't necessarily agree, and I didn't say anything to my manager before we got to the room. And that was my mistake. There's my mistake, right? But then the only black executive on the table also questioned her recommendation. And so I just sat there quietly again. And then he looked at me, he said, "What do you think?" And I said, "Oh, here we go." And I stood my ground and I said, I do disagree. It won me a sponsor, but I lost my manager. And so that was a hard lesson that happened, that I learned and I had to repair over time with my manager. Eventually she left, my sponsor stayed way longer, so it worked out in my favor, but it wasn't the most strategic choice that I made. Another time where I openly disagreed with my manager in a meeting. And another sponsor had to tell me, "You were dead wrong and you needed to stop." And I'm like, okay. Those were my wake-up call moments of, you can say things, but you can say it in the right time. There's a way to do them, and there's a way to get things done, and you have to read the room, you have to understand, and timing is everything.
I read that you said you grew up at Google. You're still a young woman yourself, and you've been there for 13 years. So if you do the math, you were very young. Yeah. Would you attest those mistakes, if you will, to just being young and not understanding just really, corporate diplomacy and tact and things of that nature?
Yes, I would definitely say so. And I love Google. I mean it genuinely. Like I said, today's our 25th birthday. After this, I'm gonna run over to the office, do our little birthday celebrations. I feel deeply connected to the company in a way that I don't think anyone can take it away from me. I feel like I've grown up there. I've seen how the company has grown up and developed in and of itself. And so, just like I've made mistakes, Google has made mistakes. I do credit some of those mistakes to being young and not understanding how to navigate. But through those mistakes and challenges, I learned and grew and got better over time.
Speaking of being deeply connected to the company, what needs to be done so that more Black women like yourself feel that deep connection when it comes to these massive tech conglomerates, or just navigating in the tech space where, we're either the one or the only or the first?
Yeah. I think it's finding your people and your place soon. So with me, and I didn't get a chance to go into a lot of my bumps and bruises, especially at the beginning, but for the first 5 years at Google, I was not happy. My friends were telling me I should quit. They're like, "Girl, you're not getting treated right. Why are you still there?" And I kept going because I just felt like it was a place for me. But what lifted me up is I had a couple of people who poured into me just at the right moments to keep me going, right? And I think that's why I created this program, is to have a systemic way to have people to pour into you at the right moments. And so those are so it's a setup, it's a system. So you don't have to know anybody at the company. You could have started 3 days ago, but there's a place for you to go if you need help, support through anything you're going with.
That's amazing. I know we are going to take some audience questions. So if you have a question, please raise your hand and we will take it. Okay, I see some questions in the middle.
Tell us your name, company, and your question. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Rachel, thank you for your comments. My name is Ashley Sims. I'm the managing director of Build in Tulsa. We're amplifying and elevating Black entrepreneurs in Tulsa, Oklahoma, the historic home of Black Wall Street. I want to talk about compensation. Anybody else thinking about this while I'm asking for a friend, but I know that there is a compensation discrepancy between a friend and her predecessor, who was a man. And how do you have those conversations as you're making, you picked your moments. You are asking for things at the right moment when you are having some success. But how do you have that conversation, not just about promotion, but compensation?
Yes, definitely. Oh, we work with the comp team a lot. And the biggest thing is I think the first step I would say is understand how compensation works at your company. I know people might go on TikTok and there's people telling you what to do and what to say. If those people do not work at your company, take it with a grain of salt. That's what I will say first. Because, for example, at Google, it's based on your performance, it's based on your location. There's lots of different factors that might have gone into that decision, and you don't want to look uninformed. Let me say this. When you go and have these conversations. So number one, understand how compensation works at your company. Usually you can go on your company's intranet to figure out some type of baseline of compensation. Then you can start, if you have a relationship with people on the team or that person who you know makes more money than you, just understand like how they stack up against some of those factors. And then if the math ain't mathin', then I would say that's when you go to your HR team with, with all of the information, with all of the receipts about this is why I feel like it's unfair. I feel like sometimes one of the biggest mistakes I feel like people make is just saying it doesn't feel right. Based on what? Like, people, and HR is going to read everything black and white. So I'm a HR adjacent team, so I'm gonna keep it real. So they're going to read everything black and white. They're not going to feed into feelings. They're going to be like, what can you prove? What data do you have? And that's the way that I would tackle the compensation question. If you don't get anywhere through the HR process, I think, again, my best strategy has been after I just do like an amazing job on a project, after I knock something out the park, that's when I ask for more money, or I ask for the next role that I know that's going to get me more money, and then make that ask then.
How y'all doing? My name is Shaquelle. I'm the CEO of Six Figure Chick Consulting, but I work with a lot of clients who work at organizations where, of course, you can't say that you can't talk about compensation, but then they find loopholes, right? So an organization that I know of, you can talk about comp, but you can't talk about job level. Job level is now considered confidential. And so therefore it makes it difficult to go to HR and say, hey, I know that I'm being paid less than this person, and HR can then kind of write it off and say, well, you're not sure about the job level. Y'all may be at different job levels. So for people who do not have a team like you are currently, owning at Google to kind of advocate for them in that space, what do people do when companies are trying to find loopholes to just pay them less money, to not adequately compensate them regardless of the amount of kind of research that they're doing or the things that they're putting forth?
Yeah. I think, number one, if I was in that situation, and this is not like a playbook, but I'm telling you what I would do in that situation, I would try and find somebody who can get the information. So if there's levels, there's people usually who are privy to that information that you might not be as like an average employee, but maybe your manager or your manager's manager, who your relationship, if they inquire, maybe they might be able to get that information. And this is all speculative because I'm not at this company. And you can that way you can also get like some more information about what is happening, and not in a direct form of asking yourself. So if you can get someone to ask for you, especially your manager or somebody in your leadership chain, that's really helpful. Ultimately, you do have to decide if it's worth it to you or not. And I say this because, and I'm saying this like wholeheartedly from people who come to me every day who feel like I'm not making enough money, it doesn't feel right. This happens to me every day. And when I talk to them I have to ask them, what does the money mean to you? We also have hidden levels. You can ask other people your level at Google, but I don't know other people's level unless they have a title that represents that level. And I have to really break it down. I'm like, are you trying to buy a house? Do you feel like you could make more outside of Google? Do you feel like it just doesn't fit right? And really question yourself about what it's about, and then go after that thing. Because I've also seen people make more money and not be happy either. Yeah. And so that's where I think you can get to the place of thriving, because in thriving, we say it's, living in your ultimate moment. It's those micro moments of like, every day I wake up happy to go to work. Every day I have a good sense of well-being. Those things, like every day I'm proud of my job. And I found that when you get to that place of thriving, the money chases you. and you don't have to chase the money. Unless there's a really tactical, I would really just question yourself to think about, is there a really tactical reason why I need this money right now? Like if you're buying a house, totally. If you're going through some medical challenges, you need the money right now, go for it, you know? So just really break it down, because I do find that the money comes. And I say this because I have so many clients who will come back to me and say, you know what, Rachel, I waited, I got the promotion, now I got the money, now I'm happy. You know, like I just really question where it's coming from, because you can get there and still not be happy.
That's a great point. I think we have time for one more question.
Thank you. Hi, Rachel, dynamic speaker. Absolutely love your presentation today. Tamara Charles, Fidelity Investments, and my question to you is, how do you coach employees within Google to move throughout the company? So you might have started in HR, but you want to move into tech or another role. What advice do you give?
Yes, that is a good one. So we do have an internal mobility team. If your company has one of those, I would definitely say use that to help you move across and move towards teams. The biggest thing I would say, though, is building those networks. So for Google, anytime a role opens up, there's hundreds of applicants, right? But if you've already taken the time to build those relationships, your application stands out. And there's a delicate balance, though, because this is where I see some clients going wrong, is they're putting too many feelers out. And then the hiring managers are talking to each other and find out, like, oh, she applied for your role, she also applied for my role, she also applied for my role, she also applied. She's not really serious. So being over-socialized, over-committing in the process is also a risk. I would say figure out where you want to go strategically, make some connections in that organization, and then drive towards that path of actually applying for the roles.
We do have to begin to wrap up, Rachel, but before we let you go, what advice would you share for any person, particularly those, Black women who are struggling to get to the next level in their career, especially in tech?
Give me a second. That's a really good question, and I want to make sure I answer it thoroughly. I think, so as somebody who has also struggled in my career at tech, I would say in those moments that I struggled, I went back to my original purpose. Do I still feel like this is the place for me to be? And for me, that question has still always been yes. So then I'm like, okay, how do I tackle this challenge? Because nobody's going to push me out of here until I'm ready. And so then I focus on the challenge. I focus on who can I, number one, I'll try and think through the challenge myself a little bit. Number two, then I'll try and see who else can I bring in to help me think through this challenge and help advocate for me. So you have support, you have resources. They might not look like us. Like a lot of sponsors that I've had did not look like me. And that's okay, but they helped push me anyway. So bring in those people and give it time. The one thing I will say that I have learned, and this has been personal to my journey, is I know I've planted a lot of seeds at Google and I want to wait to see them grow. And so I think that giving it time for those seeds that you planted to grow, and not just like, well, it's been 3 weeks, I haven't heard back. And I get it. I have those moments too. Trust me. If you talk to people in my personal life, they'll be like, Rachel, did you really say? But I'm telling you, really give yourself time. Let's see it through a little bit more. And I think that will really help in the long term.
Amazing. Well, once again, everyone, please give a round of applause for Rachel Spivey. Thank you so much for being here.